She thought I couldn't see her kissing him. That's the thing about being blind. People forget you're still in the room. They speak freely. They touch carelessly. They assume that because you can't see them, you've stopped existing. My fiancée Miranda was standing in my hallway, my house, my home, with her lips pressed against a man who wasn't me. And she had no idea I was watching. But before I tell you about that moment, I need to take you back to where this story really begins, back to the darkness and the woman who became my light. Here's something nobody tells you about going blind. It's not the darkness that breaks you. Darkness you can learn to live with. Your brain adjusts. Your other senses wake up, stretching like muscles you forgot you had. You start to hear the architecture of rooms. You learn that silence has texture. No, what breaks you is the silence that falls over other people's faces when they look at you. You can't see it, but you can feel it. That half-second pause before they speak. The careful way they choose their words like they are handling something fragile. The pity that hums beneath every "how are you feeling today?" Elliot Crane had been blind for 11 months. 11 months of learning to navigate a world that had rearranged itself without his permission. 11 months of retraining his hands, his ears, his memory. 11 months of becoming a different man inside the same body. He was 41 years old. He'd built a tech empire from a garage in Oakland. He'd been on magazine covers, given keynote speeches to thousands, shaken hands with presidents. And now he couldn't find his own coffee cup without knocking it over first. The accident had been stupid. That was the part that ate at him during the long nights. Not a dramatic crash on some mountain highway, just a wet road, a moment of distraction, a truck running a red light. His driver had walked away with bruises. Elliot had lost everything that mattered. Not his money. Money was still there, piling up in accounts he couldn't read. Not his company. His board had been surprisingly loyal, at least on paper. What he'd lost was harder to name. The ability to read his fiancée's expression when she said she loved him. The chance to see if her eyes matched her words. Miranda. They'd been together 3 years, engaged for 2. She was beautiful, he remembered that much. Blonde hair that caught the light. A laugh that used to make him smile without meaning to. Ambition that had once felt like a shared language between them. She'd stayed after the accident. That was the thing he kept telling himself during the hard months. She stayed. A lot of people wouldn't have. But staying and being present are different things. And lately, Elliot had begun to notice the difference. It started with small things. The way her footsteps sounded different now, quicker, like she was always on her way somewhere else. The phone calls she took in other rooms, her voice dropping to a murmur he couldn't quite catch. The new perfume, that one bothered him more than he wanted to admit. 3 years together and he knew her scent the way he knew his own heartbeat. Jasmine and vanilla, but lately there was something else underneath, something sharp, unfamiliar. He told himself he was being paranoid, told himself that blindness was making him suspicious, turning small details into evidence of crimes that existed only in his imagination. But his body knew something his mind wasn't ready to accept. He started sleeping lighter, waking at odd hours, lying still in the dark, his dark the only kind he had now, listening for sounds that didn't belong. And then there was Solene. Solene had been Miranda's best friend since college. They'd met in an economics seminar and bonded over their shared hatred of the professor. Different in almost every way, Miranda was sharp angles and calculated moves. Solene was soft edges and genuine warmth, but somehow the friendship had lasted. She'd started coming around more often after the accident. At first, Elliot assumed it was to support Miranda, keep her company during the difficult transition. That's what friends did. But as the months wore on, he noticed something. Miranda's visits to his room grew shorter, more perfunctory. She'd check in, ask if he needed anything, and disappear before he could answer. Solene's visits grew longer. She didn't treat him like he was broken. That was the first thing he noticed. No careful tone, no performative sympathy. She just talked to him about books she was reading, about a documentary she'd watched, about the weather, which seemed like a stupid thing to discuss with a blind man until he realized she was describing it. The exact shade of gray in the clouds, the way the light looked before rain. She was giving him back something he'd lost. Not sight, but the world that sight had shown him. One afternoon, she found him in the library. He'd been sitting there for an hour, running his fingers over book spines he couldn't read, trying to remember what the room looked like. "You're in my favorite spot," she said. He turned toward her voice. "You have a favorite spot in my library." "The chair by the window. The light's good for reading in the afternoon." A pause. "Sorry, that was thoughtless." "Why?" "Talking about light, to you." Elliot almost smiled. Almost. "I still remember what light feels like. Warm on the skin. Different temperatures depending on the time of day. Morning light is cooler. Afternoon is heavier." "I never thought about it that way." "You wouldn't, you don't have to." She was quiet for a moment. He heard her settle into a chair nearby, not the one by the window, he noticed, closer to him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask, I might not answer." "How do you do it? Stay so calm. If I lost my sight, I think I'd fall apart." Elliot considered the question. Most people didn't ask things like that. They assumed the answer was obvious or too painful to discuss. "I'm not calm," he said finally. "I'm just quiet. Those aren't the same thing." "No," she agreed, "they're not." He heard her shift in her chair, heard her breathing change, like she wanted to say something else but was holding it back. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." "Solene, I can hear you thinking." A soft laugh, surprised. "That's unsettling." "Most things about blindness are unsettling. You get used to it. What were you going to say?" Another long pause. When she spoke, her voice was different, careful. "I was going to say that you seem lonelier than you were a few months ago, and I don't think it's the blindness." Elliot didn't respond. He didn't have to. She'd seen what he was only beginning to let himself feel. The thing about suspicion is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It accumulates, like snow on a window ledge. One flake at a time, so gradual you don't notice until suddenly the view is blocked and you can't remember when it happened. Elliot's suspicion built like that. A door closing too quickly when he entered a room. Miranda's laugh in the hallway, cut short when she heard his footsteps. The name Marcus mentioned in passing, then never again. Marcus, she'd introduced him once months ago. A consultant, she'd said, helping with some project at her firm. Elliot had shaken his hand, firm grip, expensive cologne, and thought nothing of it. But now that name sat in his memory like a splinter. Marcus. Who was he, really? Why did Miranda's voice change when she mentioned him? Why did the staff go quiet when Elliot asked questions? He started paying attention in ways he hadn't before. The help knew things. That was one of the first lessons of wealth. The people who cleaned your house and cooked your food and drove your cars saw everything. And if you listened carefully, if you paid attention to what they didn't say as much as what they did, you could learn a lot. Rosa, the housekeeper, always paused before entering the living room now. A tiny hesitation, barely noticeable, like she was checking to see who was inside before she committed. Thomas, his driver, had started asking whether Miranda would be joining them before every trip. The question was practical, how many seats to prepare, but there was something else underneath, a wariness. And then there was the incident with the coffee. Elliot had been sitting in the study, trying to focus on an audiobook, when Miranda came in. He heard her set something down on the table beside him. "Coffee," she said. "I made it the way you like." He reached for the cup, found the handle, lifted it to his lips. Cold. Not lukewarm, cold, like it had been sitting on the counter for an hour. "Thank you," he said, and took a sip anyway. She was already leaving. "I'll be in my office if you need me." Her footsteps retreated. A door closed somewhere down the hall, and Elliot sat there holding a cup of cold coffee, understanding something he didn't want to understand. She hadn't made him coffee. She grabbed an old cup on her way through the kitchen, delivered it like a task to be checked off, and left. Such a small thing, such a stupid thing to notice. But it told him everything. If you're with me so far, I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Whether you're watching from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, or anywhere else in the world, your presence means everything to me. This story is about setbacks, about moments that feel like endings but turn out to be beginnings. And I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me, have you ever experienced a setback that felt like the end of everything, but looking back, it was actually the start of something better? Maybe it was a job loss that led to a new career, a broken relationship that opened the door to real love, a health scare that changed how you see life. Whatever it was, I'd love to hear your story. I read every single comment, and your experiences inspire me more than you know. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. It's completely free, and it helps us keep bringing you stories that remind us all, the worst moments don't have to be the final chapter. Now, let's go deeper into Elliot's world, because things are about to get much more complicated. The call came on a Thursday. Elliot was alone in the house. Miranda had gone to some event. Solene wasn't scheduled to visit until the weekend, when his phone buzzed against the table. He'd learned to identify callers by ringtone, and this one he didn't recognize. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him reach for it. "Mr. Crane," a woman's voice, professional, warm. "This is Dr. Adeora Obai. I'm an ophthalmologist at Johns Hopkins. I specialize in trauma-induced vision loss. I hope you don't mind me calling directly." Elliot's hand tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "Through your medical team. I asked Dr. Patterson for permission to reach out. I've been reviewing your case files, and I believe there may be treatment options that haven't been fully explored. I've seen specialists, several, they all said the same thing." "I know, I've read their reports," a pause, "but I'd like the chance to examine you myself. Sometimes a fresh perspective reveals things others have missed. No promises, Mr. Crane, but I think it's worth trying." He should have said no, should have protected himself from another round of false hope and crushing disappointment. Instead, he heard himself say, "When can you see me?" The first appointment was 2 weeks later. Miranda didn't come. "I have that thing with the foundation," she'd said that morning, her voice distant. "You'll be fine. Thomas can take you." Thomas drove him in silence. The car moved through traffic Elliot couldn't see, taking turns he'd memorized during years of this same route. Left at the light, straight for 3 blocks, right into the parking garage. Dr. Obai's office was quieter than he expected. No blaring TVs or crying children, just soft music and the subtle hum of medical equipment. She met him in the lobby herself. Her handshake was firm, her voice the same warm professionalism he remembered from the phone. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Crane. I know this isn't easy." Everyone says that. Do they? I imagine most people say "I'm sorry" or "I can't imagine what you're going through." Those are things people say when they don't know what to say. Despite himself, Elliot smiled. "You're right, they do." "Well, I'm not sorry you're here, I'm glad. And I can imagine quite a lot. I've worked with patients like you for 20 years. She guided him gently down a hallway. "Let's see what we're working with." The examination was thorough. more thorough than any he'd had before. She tested things the other doctors hadn't thought to test, asked questions they hadn't asked. At the end, she was quiet for a long time. "Mr. Crane, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to understand that I'm not making promises. I don't expect promises." "Good, because medicine doesn't work that way." She paused. "But I believe there's a chance, a real chance that we can restore some of your vision. Not immediately, not completely, but enough to matter." Elliot's heart hammered. "How?" "There's a new treatment. Experimental but promising. It involves a series of procedures over several months, combined with therapy and medication. The success rate is about 40%. That means more patients don't improve than do." 40% is better than zero. "It is, but I need you to understand the commitment. This will be difficult, painful at times, and there's no guarantee." "When can we start?" Dr. Obi was quiet again. Then, "There's one more thing. During the treatment, your eyes will be extremely sensitive. Any indication that you're regaining vision will need to be kept quiet. If people know, if they treat you differently, it can actually interfere with the psychological aspects of recovery." "You're telling me to keep it secret." "I'm telling you that discretion will serve you well, for medical reasons." Another pause. "Though I suspect you may find other reasons to value discretion as the weeks go on." He didn't understand what she meant, not then. He would soon enough. The treatments began. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Thomas drove Elliot to a clinic that Miranda believed was for physical therapy. "You should keep up your strength," she'd said when he mentioned the appointments. "Sitting around all day isn't good for you." She hadn't offered to come. Dr. Obi was right. It was difficult. The procedures involved injections directly into his eyes. He couldn't see them, which was almost worse, feeling the needle approach without being able to brace for it. The medication made him nauseous. The therapy sessions left him exhausted. But slowly, impossibly, something began to change. It started with light. Not vision, not exactly. More like the difference between standing in a room with the lights off and standing in the same room with your eyes closed. Subtle, almost imperceptible. But there. "I can tell when I'm facing the window," he told Dr. Obi at week 3. "It's brighter." She smiled. He couldn't see it yet, but he heard it in her voice. "That's excellent. Your optic nerve is responding. We'll increase the frequency of treatments." Weeks passed. The light grew stronger. Shapes began to emerge, not clear, not defined, but present, like seeing the world through frosted glass. And as his vision slowly returned, so did his ability to observe. The first thing he saw clearly was Miranda's face. It was a Tuesday evening. She'd come into his study to tell him something. He forgot what the moment had happened, and he'd been sitting by the window where the light was strongest. He turned toward her voice, the way he always did, but this time something was different. He could see her. Blurry, indistinct, but unmistakably Miranda, the shape of her face, the pale gold of her hair, and something else. Her expression. She was looking at him the way you look at furniture. The way you look at something you've stopped really seeing because it's just there, taking up space, neither interesting nor important. And then she blinked, and her face rearranged itself into something softer, concerned, the face she wore when she remembered he was supposed to be watching. But he'd seen the first face, the real one. And he knew. "What is it?" she asked. "You look strange." "Nothing." He turned back toward the window, "just tired." She left without another word. Elliot sat in the fading light, his heart pounding, the blurry world swimming before his healing eyes. He had to be sure. He couldn't accuse her based on an expression, a feeling, a collection of small things that might mean nothing. But he also couldn't pretend anymore, not to her and not to himself. He needed to see more. So he decided to keep pretending he was blind. The deception was easier than he expected. After 11 months of blindness, Elliot had developed habits. The careful way he navigated rooms, trailing his fingers along furniture. The way he tilted his head when listening, orienting by sound. The constant small accommodations that had become second nature. All he had to do was keep doing them. His vision improved weekly. Shapes became forms. Forms became faces. Colors bled back into the world, first muted, then vivid. And he watched Miranda apply makeup in the hallway mirror, her fingers quick and practiced, her expression flat until she sensed him approaching. Then the mask would slip on, smooth and perfect. He watched her text on her phone, angling the screen away from him reflexively, even though he wasn't supposed to be able to see it. He watched Marcus arrive. The first time was a Thursday afternoon. Miranda had said she'd be in meetings all day, but Elliot heard the front door open, heard her voice, bright, laughing, a tone she never used with him anymore, and then a deeper voice responding. He was in the study, pretending to listen to an audiobook. The door was half open, and in the hallway mirror he saw them. Miranda, reaching up to straighten Marcus's collar. Marcus, catching her hand and bringing it to his lips. A moment of intimacy so casual, so practiced, that it could only have been rehearsed 100 times before. Elliot's stomach turned, but he didn't move, didn't react. He just watched. Over the next few weeks, he gathered evidence the way you gather kindling for a fire. He saw Marcus's car in the driveway on days Miranda claimed to be out. He found a credit card statement with charges to restaurants he'd never heard of, expensive restaurants, the kind you take someone when you're trying to impress them. He discovered that 3 significant transfers had been made from his personal accounts, authorized by Miranda, using the financial power of attorney he'd granted her after the accident. Each piece was small on its own. Together, they told a story. She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning something, building towards something. And she thought he couldn't see any of it. Through it all, Solene remained constant. She came by 3 times a week now. Sometimes she read to him. He could have read himself by this point, but he didn't tell her that. He liked listening to her voice. Sometimes they just talked. She told him about her childhood in Louisiana, about her grandmother who had raised her, about the summer she'd spent teaching English in Ghana after college. She asked him questions nobody else asked. Not, "How are you feeling?" but, "What are you thinking about when you get quiet?" "I think about time," he told her once. "How it moves differently in the dark. Minutes feel like hours, hours feel like days, and then suddenly months have passed and you can't account for any of them." That sounds lonely. It is. Is it less lonely now? He turned toward her, wishing he could let himself really look at her, see her face fully instead of through the protective blur he maintained around others. "When you're here," he said, "yes." She didn't respond, but he heard her breathing change, heard the soft catch that meant she was feeling something she wasn't saying. They were both feeling things they weren't saying. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Sunday afternoon. Miranda was out, with Marcus, though she claimed it was a charity brunch, and Elliot and Solene were in the garden. The autumn air was cool, the smell of fallen leaves mixing with the last roses of the season. "Can I ask you something?" Elliot said. "Always." "Why did you really start coming here, after the accident? You and Miranda are close, but you didn't have to visit me. You didn't owe me anything." Solene was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "At first it was for Miranda. She seemed overwhelmed. I thought I could help by giving her breaks, spending time with you so she could have space. And now," she trailed off. "Now I come for different reasons." "What reasons?" Another long silence. Elliot waited. "Because I like who you are," she said finally. "Not who you were, the successful businessman, the visionary. I didn't know that person. I know the man who sits in this garden and talks about how time feels different in the dark. The man who asks real questions and actually listens to the answers. The man who's been through something terrible and somehow become kinder instead of bitter. I'm not sure I've become kinder." "You have," her voice was firm, "you just don't see it." He almost laughed at the irony. He was seeing more now than he ever had. "Solene." "Yes." "Miranda and Marcus, you know about them, don't you?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "How long?" he asked. Elliot, "How long have you known?" 6 months, maybe longer." Her voice cracked. "She made me promise not to tell you," she said. "She said she was going to end it. She said it was a mistake and she was going to fix things. But she didn't." "No, she didn't." "And you kept coming here, knowing what she was doing, knowing what I couldn't see." "I kept coming because of you." Solene's voice broke. "Because I couldn't stand the thought of you being alone with this, even if you didn't know it. Because watching her treat you like furniture made me want to scream." Elliot felt something shift in his chest, not the anger he expected, something else. "You should have told me." "I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "Afraid of hurting you, afraid of losing her. She's been my best friend for 15 years. Afraid of what it would mean if I admitted to you that She stopped. "That you what?" "That I care about you, more than I should, more than a friend's fiancé's best friend is supposed to care." She laughed, a broken sound. "It's absurd, you're her partner. I had no right to feel anything, but feelings don't ask for permission." Elliot reached out. His hand found hers, not by accident, not by fumbling. He knew exactly where she was. "I can see," he said quietly. Solene went still. "What?" "My vision's been returning, slowly, for weeks now." He turned to look at her, really look for the first time. Her dark eyes wide with shock. Her face, more beautiful than he'd remembered, more beautiful than he'd let himself imagine. "I've watched Miranda and Marcus together. I've seen the transfers from my accounts. I know everything. You've been pretending." "I had to be sure, and I had to figure out what to do." His hand tightened on hers. "But the one thing I was never pretending about was this, the conversations, the connection, that was real." Solene stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I never wanted to feel this way." "Neither did I, but here we are." Here we are. The space between them felt charged, electric. Years of rules and boundaries and all the reasons this shouldn't happen, pressing against the simple truth of what they felt. "I need to deal with Miranda first," Elliot said. "I need to end this properly, but after that, if you're still here." "I'll be here, no hesitation. I'm not going anywhere." He lifted her hand to his lips, the way he'd seen Marcus do to Miranda, but this was different. This was honest. "Then wait for me," he said. "It won't be long now." Beautiful people, if you're feeling something right now, if your heart is beating a little faster, then you understand why I love creating these stories. This is what we do here at Story Buddy. We craft moments that matter. If you're watching from the United States, the UK, Canada, South Africa, or anywhere in the world, I want you to know that you are the reason this channel exists. Your comments, your shares, your support, it means everything. Take a moment right now to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Join our family of people who still believe in love stories that take their time, that earn their endings. Now let's see how Elliot handles the confrontation with Miranda, because this is where everything changes. Elliot spent the next week preparing. Not gathering evidence. He had enough of that. Not rehearsing speeches, he'd never been good at theatrical confrontations. He prepared himself emotionally for the end of something he'd once believed was his future, for the woman he'd thought he would marry looking at him like a stranger, for the loneliness that would follow even if it eventually gave way to something better. He also prepared practically, called his lawyer, changed the passwords on his accounts, revoked Miranda's power of attorney effective immediately, moved certain assets into protected trusts. When the time came, he wanted there to be no question about what belonged to whom. The confrontation happened on a Saturday evening. Miranda was packing. He'd noticed her doing this for days now, small things disappearing from closets, jewelry missing from boxes. She thought she was being subtle. She wasn't. He found her in the bedroom, folding silk scarves into a suitcase. His suitcase, actually. The Louis Vuitton he'd bought for their anniversary trip 2 years ago. Going somewhere, he asked from the doorway. She startled, recovered quickly. Just organizing, the closets are a mess. They are not. I had Rosa clean them last week. Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty. She wasn't used to him challenging her. What do you want, Elliot? To talk. About what? About Marcus. About the money. About the fact that you've been planning to leave me for months. The color drained from her face, but she was quick. He'd always admired that about her, even when it was working against him. I don't know what you think you've heard, but... I haven't heard anything, I've seen it. He stepped into the room, and for the first time he looked at her directly, deliberately. I can see, Miranda. I've been able to see for weeks. She stared at him, and he watched the calculations happen behind her eyes. What did he know? How much had he seen? What could she salvage? Elliot, whatever you think you saw. I saw you kissing him in the hallway. I saw the transfers from my accounts. I saw the way you look at me when you think I can't see you, like I'm nothing, like I'm already gone and you're just waiting for the paperwork. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is 3 years of my life spent with someone who was waiting for a better option. What's not fair is lying in a hospital bed, terrified and broken, while you were already calculating your exit strategy. His voice didn't rise. He'd practiced this. What's not fair is finding out that the person I trusted most was stealing from me, while I couldn't see her do it. Miranda's face hardened, the mask dropping finally completely. You want to talk about fair? I spent a year of my life playing nursemaid to a man who couldn't even find the bathroom without help. I gave up my career, my social life, my freedom. You gave up nothing. You delegated everything to Solene while you ran around with your boyfriend. Solene, Miranda's laugh was ugly. Of course, your little savior. Did she run to you with stories? Did she tell you everything while she was bathing you and feeding you and pretending to be selfless? She didn't tell me anything. She didn't have to. I saw it for myself. And now what? You're going to ride off into the sunset with her. The blind billionaire and the best friend. It's pathetic, Elliot. A cliché. Elliot felt a strange calm settle over him. He'd expected this to hurt more. But standing here, watching her sneer, he realized the hurt had already happened. Months of it. This was just the acknowledgement. I'm not discussing Solene with you. This conversation is about us, or what's left of us. There's nothing left. Miranda grabbed the suitcase, abandoning subtlety. I'm done pretending. I've been done for months. I know. That's why I've already had the locks changed, and the accounts secured, and the lawyers notified. She froze. What? You have 24 hours to take your personal belongings and leave. Anything that was purchased with my money stays. The engagement ring stays. The jewelry stays. You can keep the clothes. I don't want them. You can't do this. I already have. There's a car waiting outside to take you wherever you want to go. If Marcus is available, I'm sure he'd be happy to accommodate you. Miranda's face twisted. For a moment, he thought she might scream, might throw something, might make the dramatic scene she was so good at creating. Instead, she laughed quietly, bitterly. You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought about staying. When the doctors said your blindness might be permanent, I thought, maybe I could make this work. He's rich enough. He'll never know what I'm doing. It could be a comfortable life. And what changed? I got bored, she shrugged. You got boring, Elliot. All that sitting in the dark, feeling sorry for yourself, all that quiet, I couldn't stand it anymore. I was healing. You were wallowing, and I don't do wallowing. No, you do betrayal. It suits you better. Miranda stared at him for a long moment. Then she zipped her suitcase and walked past him toward the door. Goodbye, Elliot. I'd wish you happiness, but I don't particularly care what happens to you. I'd say the same, but the truth is, I hope you find what you're looking for, even if I know you won't. She paused in the doorway. What's that supposed to mean? It means Marcus isn't going to fill whatever hole you're trying to fill. Neither will the next man, or the one after that. You're chasing something that doesn't exist, Miranda, and one day you're going to realize you've wasted your whole life looking for it. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. She just left. The house was quiet after she was gone. Elliot stood in the bedroom looking at the empty spaces where her things had been. The closet half bare, the dresser missing its clutter, the bathroom stripped of her products. He'd expected to feel relief, victory maybe, something triumphant. Instead, he just felt tired. 3 years. 3 years of his life built around a person who was never really there. 3 years of plans and assumptions and quiet hopes, all of it revealed as fantasy. He sat on the edge of the bed they'd shared for so long that now felt too big for one person. And he let himself grieve. Not for Miranda, for who he'd thought she was, for the future he'd imagined, for the version of himself that had believed in that future. It took a long time. The light shifted through the windows, afternoon becoming evening becoming night. When he finally stood, his legs were stiff and his eyes were dry. He was done looking backward. Elliot didn't call Solene the next day. Or the day after that. It wasn't that he didn't want to. He thought about her constantly, her laugh, her voice, the way she looked at him when she thought he couldn't see. But something held him back. He'd spent 3 years in a relationship built on performance, on showing up as the man Miranda expected him to be, on hiding the parts of himself that didn't fit her vision. He didn't want to do that again. Before he could be with Solene, if she still wanted him, if this thing between them was real and not just the heightened emotion of crisis, he needed to figure out who he was now, after the accident, after the blindness, after the betrayal. He needed to become someone worth loving for the right reasons. The first week was the hardest. The house felt enormous without Miranda's presence, even though that presence had been toxic. He'd grown used to her footsteps, her voice on the phone, the background noise of another person existing in his space. Now there was nothing but silence. He started small. Mornings at the window, watching the sunrise, something he'd taken for granted before, something he'd lost for almost a year, something he now treasured with an intensity that sometimes brought him to tears. He read, real books held in his hands, pages turned with his own fingers. He'd forgotten how much he loved reading, how words on a page felt different than words spoken aloud. He walked the grounds of his estate, seeing them properly for the first time in a year. The gardens were more overgrown than he remembered. The gazebo needed painting. The fountain had stopped working. Things had fallen apart while he was in the dark. But they could be fixed. All of it could be fixed. He called his assistant on day 10. Margaret, I need to make some changes. Mr. Crane, it's good to hear from you. What kind of changes? Everything. The house needs work. I want contractors in by the end of the week. The company needs attention. Schedule meetings with the department heads. I want to know exactly what's happened in my absence. And find me a good therapist, someone who specializes in trauma and recovery. A pause. Sir, are you all right? I'm better than I've been in a long time. I can see again, Margaret, really see, and I'm not going to waste it. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Oyelaren. She had a calm presence and a direct manner that Elliot appreciated. Tell me about the blindness, she said in their first session. What about it? What did it take from you, and what did it give you? He thought about the question for a long time. Most people only asked about the taking. It took my independence, my confidence, my sense of who I was in the world. He paused. It also took the relationship I thought I had, but maybe that was already gone and the blindness just revealed it. And what did it give you? Time, forced stillness, the opportunity to learn who was really there for me. He looked at her. It gave me a chance to see people clearly, their intentions, their character, in a way I never could when I was busy looking at surfaces. That's an unusual perspective. I've had an unusual year. He called Solene after 3 weeks. Elliot, her voice was warm but careful. I wasn't sure I'd hear from you. I needed time, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. After everything you've been through, you needed space. I understood. Did you? I wasn't sure. I thought maybe you'd think I was pulling away. I thought about it, she admitted. But then I remembered what you said in the garden about waiting, about it not being long. A pause. So I waited. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for having patience. Yes, I do. Patience is the rarest thing. Everyone wants everything immediately. You were willing to wait without any guarantee. That matters. They talked for an hour. About nothing in particular, her work, his recovery, a documentary she'd watched, a book he was reading. The easy rhythm of two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. When they hung up, Elliot realized he was smiling. He hadn't smiled much lately, but with her it came naturally. Their courtship, if you could call it that, was slow by design. Coffee at a cafe downtown, where they could talk without the weight of his house and all its memories. A walk in the botanical gardens, where Elliot described what he was seeing, and Solene helped him remember the names of flowers. A quiet dinner at a restaurant neither of them had been to before, neutral territory, a fresh start. They didn't rush, didn't pretend this was something it wasn't. They were both too old and too scarred for games. But slowly, carefully, they built something. A conversation at a time, a laugh at a time, a moment at a time. The first kiss happened on an unremarkable Tuesday. They were in his garden, the garden that had been restored now, the fountain working again, the roses pruned and thriving. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. I have something to tell you, Solene said. What? I got offered a job, a good one in Seattle. Elliot's stomach dropped. Seattle. 3,000 miles away. I'd have to move. When did this happen? Last week. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. She looked down at her hands. It's exactly what I've been working toward. The position, the salary, the opportunity, everything. That's incredible. Is it? She looked at him. Because it would mean leaving here, leaving this. Have you decided what you're going to do? No, that's why I'm telling you, because I don't want to make this decision alone. Whatever this is between us, I want it to factor in. Elliot turned to face her fully. The setting sun lit her face, caught the gold in her dark eyes. Solene, I'm not going to ask you to stay. Your career matters. Your dreams matter, and we've only been whatever we are for a few months. Her face fell slightly. I understand. But, he reached for her hand. If you're asking me what I want, not what I think is reasonable or rational or fair, I want you here. I want more of this. More conversations in this garden. More dinners where we lose track of time. More of you. More of me. All of you eventually, if you'll let me. She stared at him, and then slowly she smiled. I turned down the job yesterday, she said. What? I knew before I asked you. I just needed to hear you say it. That's not fair. No, but I needed to know. I needed to hear that this matters to you too. She squeezed his hand. I've spent my whole life being the responsible one, the one who makes the practical choice. And for once, I wanted to choose something that felt right instead of something that made sense. And this feels right. You feel right. Impossible and inconvenient and nothing like what I planned, but right. He kissed her then. Not because the moment was perfect. The sun was too bright in his newly healed eyes, and somewhere in the house his phone was ringing, and there were 100 reasons to wait for a better time. But he'd learned something important in his year of darkness. You don't wait for perfect moments. You make ordinary moments count. And this moment, standing in a restored garden with a woman who chose him over everything logical, was the most ordinary, most extraordinary moment of his life. Thank you so much for staying with me through this journey. If this story has touched you, I'd be honored to have you as part of our Story Buddy family. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment telling me your favorite moment from Elliot and Solene's story, and share this video with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Whether you're watching from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, or anywhere else in the world, thank you. Your support makes these stories possible. Now, let's see how Elliot and Solene build their forever. 1 year later. The house looked different now. Not just the physical changes, though there were plenty of those. New paint, new gardens, rooms that had been closed off for years finally opened and aired and filled with light. It was the feeling that had changed, the weight that used to hang in the hallways, that oppressive silence that Elliot had grown accustomed to during his months of darkness, gone. In its place, something lighter. Laughter drifting from the kitchen where Solene was attempting a recipe her grandmother had taught her, usually with mixed results. Music playing from speakers throughout the house. She'd introduced him to jazz artists he'd never heard of, and he'd responded with classical composers she'd missed. The sound of conversation, real conversation, between two people who actually wanted to hear each other's answers. Elliot stood at the window of his study, watching the morning light spread across the grounds. His vision was 90% restored now. There were still occasional blurs, moments of static, particularly when he was tired. Dr. Obai said it might improve further with time, or this might be as good as it gets. Either way, he was grateful. For every sunrise, for every face he could read, for every expression that crossed Solene's face when she didn't know he was watching. The door opened behind him. There you are, her voice, still capable of making him smile reflexively after all these months. Breakfast is ready. I only burned the toast a little. That's an improvement over yesterday. Yesterday I burned it a lot. Progress is progress. She came to stand beside him at the window. What are you thinking about? How different everything is. Good different or bad different? Good, he turned to look at her. A year ago I was sitting in this room in the dark, literally and metaphorically. I thought my life was over, not ended, just over. The meaningful part finished and whatever came after would just be waiting. And now I think the meaningful part is just beginning. Solene leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. That was almost poetic. I've been practicing. I noticed. You're getting better at saying how you feel. I had a good teacher. She laughed softly. I didn't teach you anything. You already knew how to feel things, you just forgot you were allowed to show it. They stood there for a moment, watching the light change, the comfortable silence between them full of things that didn't need to be said. "I have something to show you," Elliot said. "What?" "Come with me." He led her through the house, down a hallway she didn't often use, to a door she'd never seen him open. "I've been working on this for a few months," he said. "I wasn't sure if it was. I didn't know how you'd react." "You're making me nervous." "Don't be nervous." He opened the door. It was a studio. Not a home office, not a guest room converted into something else. A real studio, with north-facing windows and professional lighting and storage for canvases and supplies. Solene's breath caught. "Elliot, you mentioned once that you used to paint, when you were younger, before life got busy and practical considerations took over." He watched her face, trying to read her reaction. "I thought maybe you'd like a space to start again." "You remembered that." "I remember everything you tell me." She walked into the room slowly, touching the easel, the shelves of paints, the stacks of canvas. Her eyes were bright with tears she wasn't shedding. "This is too much." "It's not nearly enough." He followed her in. "You gave up so many things to help me when I was at my lowest. You put your life on hold. You turned down that job in Seattle. You chose me over every logical option. I can never pay that back, but I can try to give you space to be who you want to be, not just who you have to be." She turned to face him. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't do any of that expecting." "I know you didn't. That's exactly the point." He took her hands. "Solene, I love you, not because you were there when I was blind, not because you were kind when others weren't. I love who you are, your curiosity, your humor, your stubborn refusal to give up on people. And I want you to have everything you've ever wanted, even the things you told yourself you couldn't have anymore." The tears fell now, sliding down her cheeks. "You're going to make me ruin my makeup." "You're not wearing makeup. It's 9 in the morning." She laughed through the tears. "Okay, you're going to make me ruin my face then." "Your face is perfect." "Now you're being ridiculous." "I'm being honest. There's a difference." She kissed him, sudden and fierce and full of all the things she couldn't say. He held her close, feeling her heart beat against his chest, thinking about how different this felt from anything he'd known before. With Miranda, love had been a performance, a role they both played, never quite believing their own lines. With Solene, love was just presence, showing up, being honest, trusting that the person beside you would catch you if you fell. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips, "for seeing me." "Always," he said, "I'll always see you." 3 years later. The villa in Tuscany was everything they'd imagined and nothing they'd planned. They'd talked about travel someday, about all the places they wanted to see together, Paris, Tokyo, Cape Town, the coast of Maine. But somehow, when the time came to actually choose, they'd ended up here. Rolling hills and ancient olive groves and a stone house that had stood for centuries. "It's ridiculous," Solene had said when they first saw it. "We don't need something this big." "No," Elliot had agreed, "but we want it. Isn't that enough?" It turned out it was. Their daughter was born in the spring. They named her Elena, after Solene's grandmother. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness, which meant they were in for a challenging few decades. Elliot didn't mind. He'd faced challenges before. He'd survived blindness, betrayal, and the slow, painful work of rebuilding himself from scratch. A stubborn toddler was nothing. Besides, he had help. One evening, a few months after Elena's first birthday, Elliot found Solene in the garden. She was sitting on a bench overlooking the vineyard, their daughter asleep in her arms. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. He sat beside her, careful not to wake the baby. "You're staring at me," Solene said without looking up. I was blind for almost a year. I'm making up for lost time. She smiled. You've been making up for lost time for 3 years. I need at least another 50. That might be arranged. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light change. Elena stirred, made a small sound, settled again. Do you ever think about how we got here? Solene asked. Sometimes. It's strange, isn't it? All the terrible things that had to happen for this to exist. She looked at him. Your accident, Miranda's betrayal, all that pain. You're wondering if it was worth it. No, I know it was worth it. I'm wondering if there was an easier path, one that didn't require so much suffering. Elliot considered the question. He'd thought about it himself, late at night when sleep wouldn't come. Maybe there was, he said finally. Maybe in some other version of our lives we met differently, under easier circumstances, without all the wreckage. But I don't think we'd be the same people. He reached for her hand. The pain changed me, made me more patient, more grateful, more aware of what actually matters. If I hadn't lost my sight, I might never have learned to really see. That's very philosophical. I've had a lot of time to think. She leaned her head against his shoulder, careful not to jostle Elena. I love our life, she said softly, even the hard parts, even the parts that don't make sense. Even the parts that started with betrayal. Especially those, because they led here. Here, a vineyard in Tuscany, a sleeping baby, a man who had been broken and rebuilt himself piece by piece, a woman who had chosen love over logic and never regretted it. Here was better than anything Elliot had imagined during his months in the dark. Better than any future he'd planned before the accident, before the blindness, before everything fell apart. Because here was real. And real, he'd learned, was always worth waiting for. The sun dipped below the hills, and the first stars appeared. Elliot looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the life they'd built together from the ruins of something that had once seemed unrecoverable. Thank you, he said. For what? For waiting, for choosing me, for being here. Solene smiled, the same smile that had anchored him through the darkest year of his life. Thank you for learning to see, she said. And under the Tuscan sky, surrounded by everything that mattered, Elliot understood at last what the blindness had really taught him. Not how to navigate darkness, how to recognize light when he finally found it. And that, beautiful souls, is the story of Elliot and Solene, a story about seeing clearly, not just with our eyes but with our hearts. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being part of this journey. Thank you for believing, like I do, that the most meaningful love often grows from the most unexpected soil. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that second chances are real. To everyone watching from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, and beyond, you are my community. You are my family, and I am so grateful for every single one of you. Until next time, keep your eyes open, keep your heart open, and keep believing that the best is yet to come. I'll see you in the next story, Two Hearts.